Joining us now, Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA Chief of Staff. Good morning, Mandy. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah, good morning, Gerard. Great to be with you.
All right, so give us the latest on this situation where I guess a circuit court judge had ruled that you are ineligible as a candidate for the Public Service Commission. What's the latest on that?
Yeah, so the latest is it was an unfortunate ruling we received late on Thursday evening, I believe. But as Spencer Ritchie, who's my attorney, stated quite well, this was a departure from well-established precedent that the Mississippi Executive Committee had actually followed when they approved my candidacy for Public Service Commissioner. So what we're doing right now is we are gearing up for the appeal. Now, once the judge officially enters the decision into the docket, I believe we have about 3 days to file the appeal. So we'll be ready to do that immediately. And then this matter will ultimately go to the Mississippi Supreme Court. So we will be interacting with them in terms of the timeline for briefing and what's the time period by which we can expect a decision from them. But the good news on my end is that this will all be under expedited review. And so we should know relatively soon, in the relatively meaning how long cases can sometimes take, relatively soon where the Supreme Court will ultimately come out. But I do feel confident that the Supreme Court will come out in favor in the same way that the Mississippi Republican Executive Committee did.
Can you share with us, Mandy, the details involved here in the case? Did somebody complain, I guess, and file a complaint? Is that how that worked? And
Yeah.
What did they allege? What did they charge?
So there's 3 components that must be met in order to run for Public Service Commissioner. One is to be at least 25 years old. 2, to have been a citizen for 5 years, and then 3, to be a resident within the district for 2 years. Now, what the person who has brought this challenge, and mind you, it's a bit odd because this person is not actually either of my opponents. It's someone running in a completely different race, but he filed this charge that I did not meet the citizenship requirements, this 5-year requirement. And what's important to understand is that by Mississippi law, there is a difference between the citizenship standard, which is premised on intent, or domicile, which is tied to intent, versus residency. And so I've always felt very strongly, my argument, Gerard, is that I've been a lifelong citizen of Mississippi. I'm a 7th generation Mississippian, grew up here my whole life. And it's crazy to me to think that the day I turned 25, I was qualified to run for this position. But then the 7 to 8 years that I spent serving the conservative interest in Washington, D.C., and bringing my Mississippi values with me everywhere I went for, ultimately for the President of the United States, that gave me the experience that makes me the most qualified person in this race, that could be skewed to disqualify me when very clearly I do meet the 3 laid out requirements.
Can you explain or share your thoughts, Mandy, as to why someone running in a totally separate race would bring this forward?
Yeah, well, I think, Gerard, and you're in the thick of Mississippi politics. I challenge the status quo of the state, and there are those that are threatened by that. And the person who's challenging this, what I've heard, I'm not going to get into the gossip of the day, but I've heard that he is just a useful proxy for those that do not want someone like me, who I'm my own thinker. I understand these issues, and I am very committed to changing the fundamentals of Mississippi's economy so that we can continue to grow in ways that people have never thought about, but to get out of Mississippi being the last in the worst kind of ways and the first in the worst kind of ways, to change that trajectory. And there are those in the Mississippi establishment that are threatened by that are using a useful proxy to go after me and try to keep me out of this race.
So you indicated that an appeal has been filed. Is that correct?
It will soon be filed in the next day or 2.
Okay. So will that case ultimately, Mandy, end up before the same judge, Circuit Court Judge Lamar Packard?
No, it'll go before the Mississippi Supreme Court.
Okay. Okay, so this rises to the level of being heard by the Supreme Court. And then the other obvious question, you may have already touched on it, but given that the primary is coming up in August, you've got to get a decision here pretty quick. You said relatively, and I appreciate that assertion, relatively, but you could be severely injured if you don't get a decision by then.
Yeah, I believe they will. They will certainly rule well before the August 8th primary date. I've again, it kind of depends. We have not yet had a conversation, and I say we because I'm also including Spencer in this conversation, who's been my counsel all along. We've not yet had that initial conversation, but typically you can see with the briefing schedule and decisions between a 6-week to a 2-month time period. So again, that's not ideal, but the reality is I'm still on the ballot. Once I appeal this decision, I am still on the ballot. I'm still going to be out there meeting with Mississippians, talking to them about what their needs are, how I can help that, and how I can implement a greater vision for the Northern District using my skills and experience that I actually bring to the table. So that's what I'm going to keep on doing.
Okay, so that was my next question. And you're proceeding business as usual with your campaigning for this office.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not one to ever back down from a fight, and I'm certainly not giving up on this one right now. We're going to keep on trucking along, and again, getting out there to as many communities as I can. Tomorrow night, we've got a big candidate forum in DeSoto County, so I'll be going out there. That's obviously a very important part of this district because it's where there's been a ton of growth. So I'm very excited to go meet with the folks out there and answer any questions as may pertain to my status as running. But I'm on the ballot, I am running, and I'm going to continue to fight for my ability to run for office and ultimately let the voters decide, not let some again misapplication of existing precedent get in the way of the Northern District having an opportunity to vote for someone like me that brings something different and passionate, but very experienced and knowledgeable to the equation.
What are you hearing on the ground, Mandy, from folks with respect to Mississippi? As you said, Mississippi's economy, and I think the PSC and its policies play a critical role in development and growth of our economy. What do you hear?
Well, I think Mississippians are tired of having to pay more for their electricity that isn't justified, or having to deal with unreliable electricity. In the Northern District, there were rolling blackouts over Christmas. Now, granted, a lot of that was TVA territory, but Mississippians are tired of that. And I tell them they do not have to accept that as the status quo. And my predecessor, the Democrat who held this position for so many years that frankly went unchallenged as of 2019, he invited decisions that are going to make that worse here in the state. So people are feeling the harm caused by the extreme left agenda being pushed by President Biden. It's making the price of gas, electricity, groceries, everything more expensive. Mississippians are fed up, and I'm not only talking to them about how we can fix it, but we can fix it in a way that makes their lives easier, but also brings more opportunity to their families and community. And for that, they are hopeful and excited.
Mandy, how will you leverage your experience in Washington as former EPA Chief of Staff under President Trump? This seems to be this whole issue of energy in general has got a lot of attention in Washington, and you really can't segregate that from state policy. How will you leverage that to help Mississippi?
Well, I'm actually on Wednesday, I've got to go up to the House Oversight Committee. I'm testifying on this very issue about the role of inflated energy costs and inflation, and then the rest of our flailing economy. What I bring to the table here in Mississippi is not only a knowledge and a working expertise on it, but these relationships to where if there are resources that are needed on the ground here in Mississippi, it's not just energy, as you know, we focus on that a lot, but it's also access to clean drinking water. There are 140,000 residents within the Northern District that are still on well water, and a lot of that well water tests positive for things they should not be exposed to. So bringing those resources by virtue of the relationships I have into the district to help fix these problems. I'm a problem solver. I know what I'm talking about, and I can leverage the relationships I have, the understanding of how resources can be divvied up and bring it back here into the district to take us a step up.
Mandy, appreciate the updates, and I'm sure we'll be talking to you some more on this issue. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Gerard.
You got it. Mandy Gunasekara, former EPA Chief of Staff and candidate for the Northern District Public Service Commissioner, has been our guest on Middays. We're coming right back. Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, at 11:05.